Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast, where men share ideas to manage money, the home, and a life full of experiences with our partners.
Welcome to the Modern Husbands podcast. Every other week, Dr. Ross, Kristen Sherrill, myself will meet with a guest national expert to discuss strategies to manage money with our partners, share lifestyle ideas to live happier and healthier lives, and have some lighthearted laughs. You may be wondering what a modern husband is. If you're listening and you support your careers or partner's career ambitions, if you root for their career successes, if you respect your partner and want to help lead many of the efforts around the home and believe managing money responsibly is important, if you want to live a life full of experiences with your partner and your family, you are a modern husband. Welcome to the community. Dr. Ross is an assistant professor at the University of Kentucky and an expert in financial counseling and financial therapy. Kristen Sherrill is a director at NextGen Personal Finance and a Dartmouth grad whose wife is a medical doctor. And I am Brian Page, founder of Modern Husbands and husband to my amazing wife, Hope Page. Dr. Ross, Christian, and I are all excited that a fellow Modern Husbands Advisory Board member has joined us today. Dan Kadlec is a trailblazer modern husband. Dan's wife, Kimberly, is the CMO, CEMEA, and Senior Vice President of Global Marketing Solutions and Customer Marketing at Visa. Dan is an author and was a financial journalist for decades with USA Today, and then Time and Money Magazine. Dan Kadlec has appeared on Oprah, CNN, CNBC, Good Morning America, and many other programs. But before we bring on Dan, we've had some listeners request that Doc share a bit about why some men struggle to come to grips with a partner who earns more than them. Why is that the case?
Well, Brian, I think that's a really great question, right? And I will say there, I think just a little caveat, I think we see this starting to shift a bit, especially in our modern cultures, and especially I think with Dan, who's going to come on later and talk about it. But in simplistic terms, I think it's because of the traditional cultural gender norms that we have. What's interesting, I think, is that there's some research that suggests that men are most anxious and stressed when they're the sole breadwinner of the family, and least stressed when their female partners contribute about 40% of the household income. However, as female partners contribute more than 40%, men start to become increasingly more stressed.
I've
Right?
got to add something here. First of all, I've been in that position where I was the sole breadwinner. My wife and I have, kind of going back and forth on who's going to take the lead in their career. It's just, we've always had that understanding. It's just a natural partnership. And it is really stressful being the only breadwinner, but it makes me, it's unnerving to hear that men feel really great when women are making 40%, but not so great when they're making more than that. It's almost like, hey, you're doing great, honey, but we're not equals. I mean, that's kind of the implied emotion, which is
or as long as you're not more than the equal amount, or more than half the amount.
So, Dr. Ross, does the research point to essentially why why it is that men sort of increase their stress, as women start to make more?
Well, I think,
in a male-female partnership?
Yeah, I think there's cultural preconceptions about what a real man is. And that's quote unquote, like real man needs to provide financially, or most. So
you're some sort of beta
for the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you're somehow less of a man, because I think what men that are going through this kind of stressful experience are feeling less self-esteem, less self-worth, identity kind of crises.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
obviously a lot of emotional stress involved with that. But it's all through these kind of toxic gender norms.
It's like when people are scrolling through Instagram, right? You see all these beautiful people in beautiful landscapes doing beautiful, ostensibly expensive things. And you start to accept that lifestyle as the norm and start to compare your lifestyle to them. You can start to feel like less of a human then.
Exactly. Well, and I think these biases are actually so strong that it's not just even with, you know, your wife, your female partner, but if others are just contributing to the family income. So I think these emotional kind of huge stressors on men are that if, you know, if parents are helping with the income, or your adult children, if you know you're older, are helping with it, or maybe a sibling's contributing to your household income because you're not financially taking care of the family. There's this kind of toxic gender norm involved.
Well, I think it's important to share with our listeners that one of the motivations for founding Modern Husbands, and for all three of us to do what we're doing, is to create this community of men who want to kind of break through those societal norms. I mean, they're there, you know, right? I mean, people do feel those societal pressures probably from older generations. And so I think it's important that we validate that emotion that some men, you know, go through. You know, if you're a listener and you're feeling that and your partner's making more than you, that's apparently that's clearly an emotion that a lot of other men feel. But, you know, at the same time, like, you know, we should root for our partners, right? I mean,
absolutely,
like we love them, and if their career ambitions are a priority for them, and there's ways that we can support that. I know that we all feel like that's our responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Their success is our success.
For sure.
Right.
And it's a
right.
team.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Now, I want to bring on Dan here. But just before we do that, we need to interject a couple dad jokes. It's a must in every podcast.
Sort of an occupational hazard. You know,
Something our audience has to just grin and bear with.
Christian, you are up first.
Okay. Why should you not buy anything that comes with Velcro?
I don't know.
It's a total ripoff.
That's good. I like that.
All right.
All right, Christian. I just got back from seeing my father. Do you know how cheap my dad is?
How cheap?
He is so cheap that when he dies, he's going to walk toward the light and turn it off.
Those dagnab electricity bills.
I get it.
That one, that kind of works. That works there.
This podcast is brought to you by Modern Husbands. We are a community of devoted husbands of working spouses who share ideas to manage money, the house, and a life full of experiences. Visit modernhusbands.com to learn more. It is time for Dan Kadlec, a modern husband trailblazer. Welcome, Dan.
Glad to be here, Brian.
So you really are a trailblazer for modern husbands. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your wife and her career journey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, of course, first of all, we've been married for 35 plus years. So this goes back.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, you know, our careers have been, you know, I guess not atypical, but they don't seem all that normal to me. I mean, at the beginning, you know, I was working, I was the breadwinner. I was, you know, everything was revolving around my career in terms of where we lived and what we did. You know, and then she had a career, but it wasn't, you know, it was more like a placeholder. And then we had kids, and then she stopped working. But then, at some point there, she really got tired of just being a stay-at-home mother and said, you know what, I really want to pursue my career. And she had jobs in advertising and had done some at-home advertising support work. And she said, I really want to give it a shot. And I said, you know what, how can I help? And the answer was, well, we got all these kids. We got 3 kids. They're still really little. You know, and I'd always really helped out. I mean, I changed diapers. I like changing diapers. I loved feeding the kid. I loved being around. So I said, look, you know, I have a very flexible job. I can take up more, and ultimately I ended up, you know, moving to a home office to facilitate her career moving forward. And it's one of the best financial decisions I ever made. Her career really took off, and we've all benefited.
And what does she do now?
She is a marketing executive. She's at Visa, so she's in global marketing at Visa.
I don't know if there's a better vignette of what we all think is a modern husband than what you just shared and your lived experience, Dan, of just simply asking your wife, what can I do? How can I support you? And doing everything you can to do it and cheering them on. I hope we get to a place where every man is like that and that every marriage is like that. So I commend you for that. Is that you did that well before many others were doing that?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because, I mean, Brian, you know, I'm a writer. For a while, my wife wanted me to take on. She wanted me to try doing a column like the male Irma Bombeck, because I was at home with the kids so much, and I was kind of into sort of, you know, the house and what was going on, and it almost turned into, you know, a career move for me to sort of like change what I wrote about. But I did a few test columns and they weren't as funny as they should have been, and I said, you know, I better just stick with financial journalism. That seems to be working pretty well.
I think we could all say you've had one hell of a career in financial journalism.
I've got a question for you. So I'm recently married as of 2020, and my wife is an MD, you know, super successful, smart, kick-ass lady. Excuse my language. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be cussing on here, but I think kick-ass is probably okay, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're good.
Sounds like a compliment to me.
Oh, no, it definitely is.
Yeah.
She's a juggernaut, is what I'm saying, and I think we have a great team. But we're early in our marriage, and you have this wealth of experience, like you just said, 35 years married. Congratulations again. That's
Thanks.
incredible. What advice would you give to a new couple? And this could be about money stuff. It could be about relationship stuff, general. I would just love to hear from you.
Yeah, you know, for us, I think what it really has boiled down to over the years is just listening to one another and understanding each other's priorities. And listening is not all that easy. I mean, anyone can listen, but you have to really hear what they're saying. And you know, compromise is part of every marriage. But we have found, both of us have found over the years that when something was really, we could feel when something was really important to the other one. And in all those years, there's been almost no pushback when one of us has felt that about the other one. It's like, you know, we would argue about stupid things, but not about the big things. And I think really just getting that feel for what your partner wants and what's important to them, and understanding that, and getting to real empathy, and then, you know, and then making whatever sacrifice is called for. I think that's worked for us, and I think, you know, really does just it sounds boilerplate, but listening, you know, is really the key. Yeah.
If you need a new book title, Getting to Real Empathy.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I do a lot of writing still, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to discover in myself is when, you know, I'm digressing. I'm sorry, but how did I get to real empathy, and how did that happen for me? And you know, not just with my wife. I mean but with anyone. You know, journalism is a great training ground for that kind of thing. So there have been many times when I didn't feel that, and I needed to, and I kind of trained myself to get there.
Yeah. Well, and kind of piggyback on that. I know you mentioned that, your wife's had a very successful career. I know you've had a very successful career as a financial journalist. So how were you and your wife able to really balance both of those very successful careers and raise two children as well?
Three children.
Three children. Excuse me.
Yeah, and I guess it goes a little bit back to compromise, what we just talked about. Again, understanding what is important. I mean, we've both made sacrifices in our, we've both had career ups and downs, as most couples do, and we've both have stepped up and made the sacrifices that were called for when it was called for. And by the way, that just makes a lot of financial sense too. I mean, when her career was like not great, or when mine wasn't great, the other one was doing well, and just from a money perspective, that's such a cushion. And being kind of a money guy, that was always part of my thinking. But it did kind of come naturally. I got to tell you, it just really did come kind of naturally. What's important to you is also important to me, so let's just go there. Yeah, we've had a number of times. The whole question of the trailing spouse has always been an interesting one to me. We haven't crossed that bridge too many times. In the beginning, she was always willing to go where I needed to go. And now, believe it or not, I'm starting to go where she needs to go. We just came back from 6 months overseas, which was part of her job. And I never thought I would sign up for that, but it was kind of cool. And, I do what I do, and and then it really helped her. And so here we are.
How much of that do you think is a result of you, being not only obviously completely in love with your partner and wanting them to be successful, but also being like practical and recognizing that money isn't masculinity, that, it's just something that when you look at the household resources, how can you figure out how to live a happy life together? How much of it is that practicality of that?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. I mean, there came a time, so I'm semi-retired now. And so there obviously came a time when she was making more than me, and, quite a bit more than me. And it's kind of really enabled sort of the lifestyle that we have right now. And, at one point, her mother said to me, "Oh, Dan, how do you feel about that?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding? I mean, I couldn't be happier."
Did I win the lottery?
This is amazing. How can I help her more? But yeah, there's a practical side of it. But I grew up with I had a great mother, and I liked what she did around the house, and I followed her around the house even as a kid, and I learned to cook, and I learned to do stuff around the house. Never really learned how to sew, but I got some real household skills, and it's not a hard thing for me to do it. I like it. I mean, I really do.
I love it.
Yeah, love it. Such a great philosophy to have, or just a great mentality to have.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's funny. I learned to cook primarily from my dad. So my dad was always the cook. It's funny how, I know we talked about this with Dr. Klontz as well. It's funny how some of these things, whether it's mentalities and mindsets about money or chores around the house, cooking, whatever, that like they can pass sort of semi-genetically almost from parents to child. That leads me to my next question, which is, when do you know from a practical sort of money standpoint that it's time to have children? My wife and I eventually, we want to have kids together, and, we talk about this all the time, but we don't necessarily know like when is the right time. Is there a right time?
I think that's an interesting question, and a lot of people have it before they have a family. And to me, the answer is the right time is as soon as you want to have kids. There are people that think all their ducks have to be in a row before they take that step. They need the house, they need, whatever level of income, they need support system, but guess what? Your life is going to change so many times and go so many different directions over the years. You can't see it coming. Bottom line is there's never a perfect time. And the perfect time is now if you want kids. That's the way I look at it, because once you have kids, your whole life is bent around them, and it's gonna make moves, and it's gonna twist and turn, and the thing you thought was gonna happen is never gonna happen. And
That's right.
and so why wait? I mean, if you're ready, I mean, why wait? I mean, believe it or not, a baby is not that expensive. I mean, some baby, once you get the initial outlay of whatever equipment you need, strollers and whatnot, they're not that expensive. They don't get expensive, for years, really. So it's not a money thing.
So I'm going to change gears here, because I've often wondered, you're in an exclusive group. How did you end up on Oprah, and what was it like?
It's kind of a funny story, because when I was writing for Money Magazine at the time, and I did a column when my oldest daughter went away to school in your neck of the woods, Brian,
Miami,
Ohio.
Yep.
And I wrote a column, a letter to my college-bound daughter, and it was very financially advice driven, and it had a lot of emotion from a dad letting go, and it was all about her and her new responsibility, and how this was her. She was gaining some freedom, but she was also needed to gain some responsibility, and it was a lot of that folksy, but also kind of practical advice. And it turned out that Oprah, first of all, no one goes on Oprah, but no one asks to go on Oprah. She has to ask you. She has to find you. And so we were in the middle, believe it or not, we were on a vacation in the middle of, some cruise ship somewhere, and she was trying to find me. And it was really bizarre. And of course, it made me feel like such a big shot.
Yeah.
It was a business thing, and there were a lot of people around. Someone said, "Dan, Oprah's looking for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Anyway, I called her back, and she was doing a whole special on. It was during the 08-09 recession, and she was doing a whole special on how spoiled kids were breaking their families. They had to get used to doing with less because they've been spoiled, and now no one can be spoiled anymore. And kids breaking the bank is what it was about. She loved my advice. I'm rambling. Sorry. She loved my advice, and she said, "Come on. It's funny because I'd done a lot of spots on CNN and CNBC, and I was on Good Morning America. So I was nervous as heck on all those. But for some reason with Oprah, I thought, it's daytime TV. I didn't even really know Oprah was a big deal. And so I said, I'll do it. So I go to Chicago, and I walk in, and there's this whole theater. She walks in like a goddess, and
I mean, did you tell her? Did you introduce yourself and tell her, "Hey, I just want you to know, Oprah, I'm kind of a big deal."
When we were done, and by the way, the show went really well, and she thanked me on the way out and everything. And I looked at her, I said, I guess I didn't realize you were such a big deal. And she just smiled. She just smiled like, "Oh my God." As she's walking out, people are hanging over the chairs. They just want to touch her. And she reaches up, and they touch hands, and everyone, it's like they're like, fainting. It's like, wow, this was a kind of a big deal. And of course it was, and I got lots of pickup from that, and everyone still talks about it. It was 12 years ago.
You can expect
we're asking about it.
You can expect a similar pickup, after following your appearance here on the Modern Husband.
That's right.
I'm hoping for a lot of play out of this. I really.
What were a couple things that you remember from those letters?
Oh gosh, wow! From that letter, I think it was just, you talking up the real hands-on stuff. It was like, keep track of your budget. Watch your money, save your receipts, real sort of basic stuff. Don't get a credit card, and unless you're, talk to me and we'll work that out. But mainly it was just about the responsibility of taking care of your life, and your decisions are your own now. You can call on me for advice anytime. But then I think I concluded by saying, but I'm not going to sit here and wait for that, because you're kind of sick of my advice after 18 years. but it was kind of fun, and it was a little folksy. So yeah, nothing real concrete.
Well, Dan, I know we all enjoyed having you on here, and we mean it. You are certainly a trailblazer, modern husband.
Absolutely.
We really look up to you.
By the way, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just thought of this, but I just came from my daughter's wedding in Italy, and being a modern husband gives you some good stories, just in case you don't know it. So one of the stories I said in my toast was how much I missed the days when I made her every morning. I made her pancakes, and we sang SpongeBob SquarePants every morning right before I put her on the school bus. And that is something neither one of us has or will ever forget. It was just a great moment.
Yeah, it chills up my back.
Yeah.
You know who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
Yeah, I do. we used to have the words down, man. I couldn't sing them anymore, but yeah. So the story I told was that, one time we got to the bus, and she turned around and ran home, and for no reason at all. And then we missed the bus. I was late for work, and I came chasing her home, and the newspaper was in the driveway. And as she's running home, I picked it up and just flung it at her. I was like, "What are you doing? You're going to miss the bus." And she ended up saying, I said at the end, I said, "What? Why did you turn and run like that?" I mean, she said, "Dad, I didn't like the outfit I was wearing today." I said, I'm so far out of my depth here. You know what? Just go put on a new outfit, and I'll drive you to school.
I think you handled that pretty well.
That's a good dad there.
That is a good dad.
God. But as like I say, you get stories that you'll remember for 50 years. So I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Well, thanks, Dan, for joining and sharing your stories. And for our listeners, visit modernhusbands.com for ideas to manage money, the house, and a life full of experiences like the experiences Dan just shared with us, with your family, with your partner. And that's where you can also subscribe to future podcasts. Until next time, be well.
A big thanks from Dr. Ross, Christian, and myself to today's guest, and of course, our listeners. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to today's podcast. You can find our podcast on modernhusbands.com or anywhere you download your podcasts.